Hi there, you lovely lot, and welcome to the latest episode of Pat's Procrastination, brought to you by the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel. Please do not forget to be subscribing to said YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of Pat's Procrastination. I welcome in my co-host, Chudders. I am Clazzy Clare. So here we are, episode 31. How are things with you, Chudders?
Not too bad, thank you, Claire. Not too bad. We're nearly at game time. So nearly there now.
I'm actually quite nervous that pre-season starts next week. I have ran out of time to get things done before pre-season starts. Quite frankly.
You've started making sandwiches to give away.
This is it. Well, there's still there's a rollover from last season, I believe. So we need to look at that. But the other thing is we didn't get our fun episode in. I know we were going to ask for questions and things like this before training camp or before the season started, and here we are. It was padded practice yesterday as we record this on Tuesday the 30th of July. It's just after 9 a.m. UK British time, and obviously you guys over there in the US are still asleep, but hopefully when this drops you won't be. So yeah, padded practice yesterday. What were you thinking? Day 5. Actually, before I ask you about practice, I apologise, because there was a question I wanted to ask you that doesn't really relate to the practice itself. One of the hot topics is the whole Judon Godchow contract situation. Do you feel that we're seeing too much now with the whole Judon was sitting on the mats on the field and he was talking to Mayo, talking to Wolf. You've got Godchow's agents in the building and stuff like this. This feels very different to what we would have seen when Bill Belichick was in the building. Now, I know that, you know, we're out of the section of comparing it all to Bill now, but he was like the boss for so long, so to speak, that it's difficult. It's too soon that we're going to get out of that comparison. But to me, it feels maybe there's too much being shown now. We've gone from almost them not really showing us anything, Bill being really stoic, not really saying anything, to it feels like it's all out there. And I just wondered how you felt about that.
I think it is dragging on a bit more than possibly it would have if Belichick was there. I understand why
of course,
their managers would want to get the most value they can get, and I understand why clubs would want to get players on the cheapest they can, essentially.
Of course.
I get why these negotiations happen. I suspect that Bill would have been a bit more cutthroat about it. You play or you don't, here's your offer, take it or leave it, and if you don't want to be part of this project, then cheery out. Whereas I think Mayo is more of a players coach, should we say. He's a bit more friendly, a little bit more warm. He's being very open about how highly he rates Judon, wants him as part of this team, part of this rebuild. And so Judon's possibly using his own words to his favour to say, okay, what you do, then let's make it a bit more worth my while. I think it's a difficult situation. I suspect it will end up with the Patriots giving away a bit more money if they really want these players happy and more than anything committed, because the players want to earn money. They'll be around eventually to play and earn money. They're probably not going to sit the whole season, but it's commitment, and it's the sort of message you're showing to the rest of the team, I guess. So you're letting teammates down more than you're letting your coach down necessarily. So I hope it is resolved shortly. Now, that said, I would prefer to keep Judon around. But I probably don't rate Judon as highly as Judon rates Judon. Let's put it that way. He's had a few injuries. Every season he's been with the Patriots, he's not played every game. He is a very effective, a very efficient defensive end. Yeah, ball rusher. He gets to the quarterback, he gets sacks, he gets pressures. He is a good example for the young players the Patriots are trying to bring through. It's finding that middle ground of value and not overpaying and to step aside from football for just a second, I guess, and to the British version of football and soccer, and the team that I support, Manchester United, they have had a recent history of overpaying players, paying above value for their initial signing and then paying above value for their salaries, and it's caused a big problem. And they're trying to have a revolutionise of that now, because you've got players who aren't worth the money, who you can't sell on because you're not getting the value back. And it can become a problem if you overpay players, because then the next person through the door says, well, hang on, you've overpaid him, why I expect to be overpaid as well. And what comes hand in hand with that is results. And the better your results are, the more leverage the teams have versus the player, because then you want to be part of that team. You want to be in that building. And the reality is, the recent history is, the trending, the Patriots are not a very good team at the moment. And they're not going to be likely competing for a division, let alone anything more than that. So if you want good players in your building, you're ultimately going to have to pay them a little bit more, because you're not attracting them with championships, with rings, with opportunities for success that other clubs potentially can offer. It's a fine balancing act. I hope that they retain Judon. I hope they make him happy. I hope they give him a bump for this year, and then this is probably reassessed next year. It just depends what Judon really wants. Does he want more years on his contract? Which I think the Patriots might be a bit more cautious to offer.
Yeah.
I hope resolved soon.
Well, this is it. You know, he's 31. You've got Godjoe's 29. And whilst I love it, we sit here and say how old this is, when I'm clearly older than that. It is a difficult thing, but when you're in a sport such as this, when you're in such a physicality of a sport, you do wear out quicker. And I think I'm wondering if that's what the issue is he wants more years, and they're in initially the first year of a rebuild. They don't really foresee maybe needing him for that much longer, that sort of thing, because they're looking at bringing in a lot more youth. You know, they're developing a brand new team now, sort of thing, a brand new way with the team. But I think for me, yes, I agree. I mean, I hope that this public display, if you like, doesn't create a system or a situation, where he's now a tradable asset rather than a retaining asset. Because he is an individual that I like to see in the team. He does bring a lot to the locker room and that kind of thing. You know, obviously, as well as experience on the field. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's, past it or anything like that. But I worry about the example that it sets, sitting on the sidelines in your sweatpants, on pads, on mats, sort of thing. And whilst he's great in the locker room, so that's, a great guy to have a great voice, I worry about the voice that's now external to the locker room, what that shows. And like you said, if they stiff arm the Patriots into giving him a good deal, then it sets a precedent for what's next. I hope that it's a very individual situation, and I hope that he does, ultimately feel valued and they do retain him. But it's just another one of those nuggets of drama that you just think they just don't need. There's so much they need to focus on right now. There's so much I know that we want to talk about, and I know that everybody's been talking about, the rotational O-line. There's still weaknesses that they've got, that, they didn't draft a high round left tackle and things like this. There's still so much that they've got to. I know we'll talk about it in a bit. I know there's still so many things that they need to focus on, that this feels like they shouldn't have to deal with this as well. This should have been an easier fix. And I know it's very easy to sit here and say, oh, well, they should have done this and they should have done that. But, it brings an element of when we moved into training camp practice, like the off seasons, the start of the bringing back the season, that kind of thing. The defense felt like it's okay. They brought back some guys. They've got some very dominant players. The defense isn't where we need to worry. We're all looking at the offense thinking, is Drake May going to pan out? Did they pick up the right wide receivers? How's the O-line? And now all of a sudden, for many circumstances that they can't control, the unfortunate situation of Barmore, everybody just sends their well wishes and hope that he does come back to the season. But we're setting out this season looking like they're walking into it of he's out and that's it, and we've now got a game plan for not having him there, and he's an amazing strength for the defense. So to lose him is a very unfortunate situation. thank goodness he's okay as such. He's not hospitalised. But now you've got Judon and you've got Godchow with the contract issues. It's like now you're starting to tick off your defence as well. So the worries are there. I really wanted to do this positively, but when I was writing my notes this morning, it was like there's some worries there, and I wanted to go into this being like, oh, it's fine, it's great. But now we're looking at the defense having weaknesses as well. It feels like maybe that there's too much negative, but in all fairness, this was another question I wanted to ask you. Going into this kind of camp, this practice, this season, is a lot of negativity to be expected because they're in a rebuild situation, because there's so much unknown, there's so much we're looking at, hoping works out, that kind of thing?
That's a good question, and I would say the negativity would be possibly dependent on the individual and what their expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
You are somebody who looks at this and thinks, right, fresh start, new quarterback, some different, I'm not going to say necessarily a lot better, but some different talents, probably some pieces that may fit a new system better. We got a new coach, we got a new offensive, not just offensive coordinator, a whole new offensive system, a whole new offensive structure that we've seen for the last 20 years. And you go into that hope and think, you know what, I think we could be winning 7 games here. Then the reality is you're probably going to be negative by Halloween because it isn't going to go as strongly as you thought. If you're someone who is more willing and accepting to say, okay, this isn't year 5 of a rebuild, this is year 1 of a rebuild, because this is a new era now. And this is a team who's just come off a 3-win season, and I don't have high expectations that we're going to be beating that. And we are going to have a new quarterback again, who we don't know whether he's going to start week 1 or whether he's going to sit for 7 games. Go on.
Well, as far as we know, he's not going to start week 1 because Mayo has specifically said Brissett is the starting quarterback. And I think that's what it very much, to tie it back into yesterday's practice, so day 5, so the first day of padded. It was looking very much like Brissett being the starter. He was with the ones. May was with the backup O-line, if you like. So not to push back, but I think we need to go into it knowing that, because that's what Mayo's told us.
Believe what they do, not what they say. And to be honest, it's the way around I think it should be, because I think you do need to be saying, look, we brought Brissett in all honesty, for a reason, because we want him to be our transition quarterback till Drake May is ready. But we need to treat Drake May as the starter, because he is the future. He's the one that needs to be getting reps with ones most time in preseason games. We need to be turning him from a good college quarterback into our franchise NFL quarterback. And that's the best way to be doing it. And on game days, we can just plug in Brissett. Reality is we don't necessarily mind what the result is. We just need to plug him in until May's ready, because this is a developmental year. So but the point being that goes to, okay, if you are, I'm going to say realist, but that's probably a bit mean to say that, and what my idea of realism is different to yours, for example. But if you are someone who is more open to this being year 1 of a rebuild with a completely new team who are going to take some time from the very top, from Elliot Wolf, from Gerard Mayo down, it's going to take time for them to fully establish their system, their ethos, their style of play, their style of coaching. It's going to take a year, 2 years to establish what the new Patriot way is.
Yeah.
And so in hand with that, they've got a very tough division. In reality, we can debate this later, but the reality is you've got 3 teams who are better than you. All 3 of them will be having sights on the playoffs. And the reality is the Patriots don't. So you're in a tough division for a start. Arguably, you could say the AFC is tougher than the NFC, so you're in the tougher conference as well. You've got a tough schedule. You're traveling the most air miles. Like, everything stacked against you. Excuse me. Everything stacked against you this season. It's going to be a tough year. So if you go into it expecting that, or at least open to that, if that's how it plays out, then your determination of what this is going to be a successful year, of whether you're negative, can change. And you go, okay, well, we lost that game. I didn't think we were going to meet the Bengals week 1. But what I saw, Drake May came in the second half, and he was showing some connections with Baker that I really liked. Gonzo played the whole game, and you know what? He totally tied down T. Higgins. And you can pick out the positives and come out of it, okay, well, we didn't win, but my expectation for this season isn't how many wins we get. It's how we've developed the players, how the structure is looking, how the defense is looking as a whole. And so that's probably more of the way that you can gauge whether people are being negative or positive, is depending on their outlook going into the season, and then whether they're willing to accept pure results or the individual performances and details.
Quick question I haven't had the opportunity to ask you and haven't thought about actually until now, and I know obviously we want to talk about training camp. You said something there about Brissett being successful. What happens, as your opinion as a fan, how are you going to be feeling if they actually go into this season with Brissett, QB1, and they start winning games? Then what? Because we're sort of sounds like we're looking at it as in, don't expect the beginning of the season to be that successful. Hope that there's some flashes from the offense. You know, the O-line has got some continuity, that sort of thing. And then bring in Drake May and sort of see what we've got, see where our future lies. That's all well and good, and I'm totally on board with that. But what if Brissett's winning games? Then what do we do? Do you pull him to put Drake May in to possibly then lose the rest of the season? I know we're not looking at this season as in the result of this is required to be a winning season. It is the result of this season really is to develop the future. It's kind of where we are. That's kind of what we're looking at. But what if it is different?
My retort would be how well, there's two elements: how are we winning games and what's the actual quantity. If we're 9-0, yeah, you're keeping Brissett out there almost certainly. If we are, we're winning games because we're 3-6 and we're 9 games in the season, we've already got as many wins as last year. So maybe this is
an actual winning. I know, more wins than losses. Yeah.
But my point is, what is winning? Is winning? Well, we're winning some games. We're not winning everything. We're still not really in the division. We're still not really in a playoff picture. We're winning some games. Or is winning, we're truly onto something here. We've got a system, we've got players, we've got a structure that has us competing. We're now in a playoff race, division race. If that's the case, then the likelihood is,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, you need to stick with Brissett. Now, the second part of that is, why are you winning games? Is it you've got an elite defense that are locking everyone down to 10 points a game? Is it you've got a brilliant running game that's getting you 400 yards a game, and that's what's scoring your touchdowns? And is it, okay, well, on top of that, Brissett is being a very good game manager, but we're not winning because he's throwing spirals 60 yards down the field and picking off passes we've never seen him really do. How much key to that success is Brissett? Is it that he's playing at an elite level or a top level of quarterback? If that's the case, you've got to keep him in.
Yeah.
Because that's your duty bound to the rest of your roster. And assuming that, if you're like in training and during the week, that May is not playing at the same level as Brissett, then you have to stick with Brissett. If you're winning games with the running game and defense, and it's not really quarterback play, and during the week, May's looking the better passing quarterback, then you could be going, well, you know what, we've won 6 out of the first 8 games, but we could keep this going and win more if we bring Drake May in now, because those elements, the running game, the defense, well, that'll continue. But now we can add an extra layer of this passing attack that we've seen on the practice field. We could really be onto something this year. So it's really the context of how you're winning, why you're winning, and then what are those results actually bringing you to? How many games are you truly winning to affect this season versus the future?
Yeah, that's fair.
Is that sat on the fence enough for you?
Okay, so yes, day 5 paddy practice has concluded yesterday. So what are you taking so far? Yeah, we've had 5 days. We had 4 days of throwing to air, just running around sort of thing. That's kind of how it feels. We've had 1 day of, was it Jabril Peppers that said football is finally back or something along the lines? And I'm not quoting his tweet verbatim, obviously, because I can't remember it properly because it's typical me. But yeah, Peppers was tweeting how that it's back and that it's more like a game and that kind of thing. What are you taking away so far? What have you taken away so far from what you've seen, what you've read? Is there any, have we got any positives from Grumpy Chudders?
They're possibly getting closer to knowing who their starting O-line is going to be. That's not to say they've necessarily been lighting it up.
Any good?
Possibly be getting close to some continuity and knowing who they want their starting 5 to be. I would say, and this is probably comes down to expectations. Drake May isn't setting the world on fire. Now, you may not have expected him to. This is his first camp. But it's not like, well, you've had your socks blown off and is going, well, yeah, I know he's saying Brissett's the starter, but how can he ignore May? Because May's playing so well. This is ridiculous. Like, he's not set off, but that's fine. I don't mind if it takes a few games, it takes half a season to get May to the level he needs to be at, because I'd rather do it the right way than the fastest way. That's not to say it was done wrong with Jones, because probably Matt Jones came into the league as maybe a more game-ready quarterback coming out of Alabama. And he was probably more of a game manager than necessarily an elite star that you're depending on his skill levels to keep accelerating into the NFL, which obviously never really happened. So he doesn't necessarily have to be starting week 1. You don't need to be looking at that. He doesn't have to be looking phenomenal now. It would have been nice to see. It's what we all wanted to hear. It's all what we wanted to see.
You've got 8 more practices left, so you never know.
Do we do? It could yet happen, and we will see how they go in the preseason games. The receiving room has been very competitive. They've also got a lot of names there, and they've all been having their moments to shine as well. Slightly concerned at how underwhelming almost maybe Polk is appearing to be, not getting as much separation as people might have hoped. We shall see. Hopefully that's yet to come. There's some players who don't necessarily compete at as high a level as they play on a Sunday, so we'll see how that plays out. And that could also be linked with still trying to bed in these relationships with the quarterbacks as well, and that's something they're still working on. It's obviously slightly obviously on the defensive side, as you said, Barmore down. I was pleased that Pepper's got a new contract. I do like him. On the offensive side, it's a concern as to Gibson, how affected he may get. It's okay. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm negative on what's happened, but I'm not feeling exceptionally positive and like, oh wow, yeah, new era. I can't wait. Like I can't wait for the games, but not that I can't wait because of expectations are now quite high.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
How have you thought from what you've seen and heard, Claire?
I'm feeling like I'm not ready for football to come back yet. I just feel like everything's so, I mean, I'm excited, don't get me wrong, but I still feel like, wait, it's already happening. Where was the off season? We just don't get off season. Trying to throw some positivity as a flip side, because everything that you've said, it's not wrong. We have had a lot of reports out, depending on who you like to listen to, if it's Patriots Unfiltered, if it's Phil Perry, if it's Tom Curran, if it's Six Rings podcast. everybody's been consistent in saying we're not just saying the negative just to be negative. Things, aren't perfect at the moment. But again, day 5, things aren't going to be perfect. I bet if we sat and watched a lot of the other teams' practices, which I haven't, I'll confess I haven't, they're going to have issues as well. There's always going to be teething problems when you've got new people. Flip side, some positivity. Whilst Polk maybe hasn't been sort of, as you said, lighting it up as much, Baker seems to be shining quite a lot. And there's Drake to bake and things like that. So that was interesting. The day 4, that was more so. So yeah, whilst the expectations may be higher on Polk, maybe Baker's going to be the guy. Who knows? I think for me, as long as one is serious, if we've got a really strong wide receiver in one of them, it isn't going to feel like it was, lacking in the success that we've had in the past when they've really only drafted that one more higher up the depth chart wide receiver, if you like, with the likes of N'Keal Harry and Tyquan Thornton. When they were chosen, there was, the one that they've got sort of 2 at the minute. So it's like, as long as one of them works out, then it sort of feels like, a small win, if a success, a small win. The other thing was in regards to the O-line. And whilst I know that the O-line has still got issues and they're still sort of have had their difficulties, I think it was Evan said how they looked cleaner under Brissett, but that might be to be expected because he's a more experienced quarterback. And on yesterday and Monday, Caden Wallace, the left tackle, seems to be doing well working with Scott Peters, the O-line coach. So now he was drafted as the starter. He was he the 3rd round pick? Yes, he was the 3rd round draft pick. He has been the top left tackle. He was on Friday and Sunday and then yesterday. And I've read a few things and I've heard a few things that how well that he's been working with Peters. And I think for me, that is a nugget off to the side that feels really positive, because we seem to, obviously the Patriots haven't been fully successful with O-line coaches in the sort of recent years. There hasn't been the consistency, and to have a guy come in who is already developing a player from a 3rd round draft pick to possibly a quality starting left tackle. Now obviously I know that we're throwing that in really early. We could hit game day and he he turns out to be not so great, but I feel like that's definitely a positive to look at, that he's already developing. We're already on day 5 and they're giving him the role to stay in, bringing that continuity of him at left tackle. Now, I know that people say, oh, well, he's not really a great starting left tackle and you need strength at the left tackle. And I fully appreciate all of that and not knocking all of that. But like you said, we're in a developmental year. This is something that, okay, it might take, if it takes this year to turn him into a star left tackle, I'll take it. So that next year that they maybe don't have to look at drafting one next year when they're picking sort of thing. So there's those nuggets still. It's early, we know this, and we know that they've got some major teething problems, but there's still some positive nuggets. And I love me some O-line anyway, so that's great. I'm quite. This is going to be one of my little focuses now, is being excited for our left tackle Wallace.
I'm quite on board with that, and there has been some positivity around him as left tackle. Not getting too carried away, but he can do the job. So
I'm getting carried away here.
The question I'd have, which we can't answer, is it his best position? Is he developing well? Is he going to be good enough to be playing left tackle for you? Is one thing. That's great, because they obviously need someone who's going to do it. But are you stunting his development because he'll do a good enough job to get you through a season, but ultimately he's not your starting left tackle? And if the Patriots are picking in the top 5 next year, you're going to take a left tackle then, and now he's your swing tackle. He's dropping down. Or his best is, and this is again hypothetical, is his best position right tackle, and you could make him an elite right tackle if you put him there now, which leaves a hole. You've still got to do something at left tackle. But again, if it's only a short term, as in 1 year, we need to get through this season and we're going to get that true left tackle next year, are you better developing him as a right tackle, getting him to that elite level, so that you've just got that one last piece to plug in next year at left tackle? I obviously, if he makes it as a left tackle, then brilliant. You've got some incredible value there, and maybe you don't need to be looking at wherever you're picking next year in the draft. You don't have to be looking at left tackle if you've got your man. We'll just take it with a slight pinch of salt, and let's see how things play out. Let's see how things go before we get too carried away with that one.
No, that's fair. I wasn't sort of throwing it down as a sandwich bet or anything. It was trying to pick out the positives to look at, and having some strengths building with the O-line coach. I know that Layden Robinson, the guard, the 4th round draft pick, he's been sort of really flourishing under Scott Peters as well. And it feels like a behind the scenes bit of information, and it feels like something that needs to happen anyway. But knowing those little nuggets for me as a fan, because I'm an O-line girl, because that, you know, that's just, yeah, that's my positional preferences, if you like, that and tight end. So seeing those little things, knowing that behind the scenes you've got these things clicking, because ultimately when it comes to game day, when it comes to the crunch, that's actually what brings you something that's important. Having those relationships, having all that stuff clicking in the background that isn't sort of sparkle and wonderfulness that you see with regards to like wide receivers and stuff, having that solidity is a really key. And so for me, that's something that I'm taking away from training camp as a real positive. I like mostly what's been happening with the wide receivers. They've been showing, like you said, that they've got some strengths, and they have been utilising Polk and Baker, which is good because they're our picks. I don't know what this ultimately means for the likes of Tyquan Thornton. You know me, wide receiver isn't exactly my position either, no. But yeah, I like hearing that the wide receivers are not lighting it up, but showing some stuff. And I think that's key, because the fans need that. I think, just generally speaking, the fans need that. So trying to take away. Go on.
Well, I was going to ask you one question. As you've gone through the groups there, obviously everyone wants to know, Claire, what's your take on the tight end room?
We haven't seen a lot from the tight end room, although I do understand that on day 4, Austin Hooper was tight end too, and he had a good day, smooth seam route and stuff like that. So they're more of game day things, because that's when we're going to see, maybe in the preseason, we'll see a bit more of them. I think at the moment everybody's had eyes on the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. I think that's where people are sort of reporting from. And like I said, the other thing is, I mentioned earlier in the show, the drama that's taken away from the assessing of those sorts of things is all the Judon and the Godchow contracty stuff. And I'm not trying to point fingers. I love Judon, I really do. I want him to stay. So it does feel like, because those are such glaring things at the moment, the likes of what are we seeing out of the tight ends? I'm not saying people aren't reporting, but it does feel like there is less spotlight on those sorts of things that maybe we want to see what's developing and things like that. We're more distracted at the moment with the contract thing, and I think that's a little bit unfortunate. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing. I know that Bell was not practicing yesterday, and I didn't find out why. I just found the report that he was not practicing yesterday. So maybe we'll hear more about that today. And so on our next show, we can talk about it a little bit more. He wasn't in pad yesterday. So, sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, one last question for you, I guess, on competition. There's been a few fights this year. What's your overall take on fighting in camp and training practice?
It depends on. I don't mind. It depends how bad it gets, how much conflict it brings.
Like the competition. Yeah, I don't think it generally leads to long-term issues. Because
you like aggravation, I'm not surprised.
Well, it's competition. It's two players, two elite players, whoever it is, that want to win an individual snap that is effectively meaningless in camp, but they're driven that highly that they're getting frustrated because they're not locking down a receiver, or because they're getting locked down by a corner and they're getting frustrated and they're letting it lead to something more, which I don't mind that too much. I quite enjoy the competition. It shows commitment. It shows, and I think these things usually bring people together slightly more strongly, actually, because they usually end up shaking hands by the end of the day. You rarely hear that, it's the same two players every day for 4 weeks of camp, and there's truly deep-seated hatred there. It's competition. It's players pushing and pushing each other. It's pushing themselves to be the best, but it's pushing your opponent to up their game and them to be better as well. And I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like you said, it's as long as it gets to the shake hands at the end of the day thing. As long as it's then yes, it does everything that you're saying. It breeds a competition. It kind of brings them together more in a way. It's as long as that happens, the whole shaking hands at the end of the day. It's when that doesn't happen that's what I don't like, because you don't want conflict of a negative nature that isn't the competition, the dog in them to fight for the sport. That you don't want unrest in the locker room, and that's sort of where it feels like that. I find it interesting that you asked me that question, considering the position of my positional preference of tight end, and I like it when Gronk throws him out the club. It's interesting that you would ask me that question, because you know the answer, generally speaking.
Always.
So I think that's it for another episode of Pat's Procrastination. Do you believe you have another point? Do go on. We have a little bit of time, so quickly.
One last point before you wrap up. So, in case anyone's not aware, on Thursday is Claire's birthday. What she's asked for this year is if you could all please send through your favourite Claire gifts. She loves to send them out.
No.
She loves to send them out as comments, as posts on Twitter, as reactions. So if you could send through to celebrate her birthday your favourite ones, or anything that you think quite represents her very well, then please do flood her with those on Thursday. So happy birthday, Claire.
Thank you for doing that. Great. Okay. Really wish we'd have wrapped up before that. So, yes, another episode of Pat's Procrastination, episode 31. We will come to you in 2 weeks. That's a question for you.
That seems about right after first game.
Yeah.
Only 10 days away now? Excellent.
I can't believe it. Really can't believe football is back already. How can we not be excited? It is what it is. I'm just worried that I haven't got everything done. But yes, excited for the season to start. Pre-season game next Thursday. So we'll be back following the pre-season game. So yes, make sure you are subscribing to the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel so you hit episode 32, where we will be talking about the Panthers game. I haven't even got my schedule up. The Panthers game. There we go. You all know me in my memory. Anyway, from me. Tune in next time, folks. And as always, go Pats.
LFG.